Well, I want to welcome everybody to St. Anselm tonight. We're so excited to have Dr. Roback Morse with us. Before I formally introduce her, I just wanted to share a personal story. She was in the business of starting marriages before she actually got into the business of starting marriages. My husband Scott and I had the great privilege of having her as a professor at George Mason University in Virginia. We were both in the PhD economics program there, and in fact, it was during the first year of graduate school that we got to know one another through a study group formed to, I would say, survive Dr. Morse's PhD microeconomics class. A few years later, we were married, and 4 children later, it's such a privilege to have the honor of hosting her here. So she was a demanding professor who made you want to strive. And at times, I have to say, my brain did hurt after a class of hers. You could expect a microeconomics problem that would go on for 8 pages. And but she is, before she started the Ruth Institute, she is a top-tier academic economist. And I just remember, I remember finding out that she was, one of her first published articles was among the most cited in economics. So we're just very lucky to have her here. Since her time at George Mason, she's become a dedicated warrior to the cause for traditional marriage, which is why she's here to speak with us tonight. She's the founder and president of the Ruth Institute, which seeks to, quote, promote lifelong marriages to college students by creating an intellectual and social climate favorable to marriage. She's the author of Smart Sex, Finding Lifelong Love in a Hookup World, and Love and Economics, Why the Laissez-Faire Family Doesn't Work, which was reissued as Love and Economics, It Takes a Family to Raise a Village. And I see that she doesn't exactly agree with our Secretary of State now, does she? Dr. Morse received her PhD in economics from the University of Rochester. She taught economics at Yale University and George Mason University for 15 years. She's a regular contributor to the National Review Online, National Catholic Register, Town Hall, MercatorNet, and To the Source. In addition, she's testified as a proponent of traditional marriage during the Proposition 8 campaign in California and testified before various legislatures across the U.S. She lives on the other coast in California. She has a husband. She has a husband and 2 children, and they've also been foster parents. We're blessed to have her here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse.
We joke around that the Ruth Institute is really a dating service, but I didn't realize it went all the way back to grad school when I was teaching at Mason, so that's great. Look, I'm very happy to be here tonight to talk with you about the definition of marriage and the current struggle that you all have going on over the issue of the definition of marriage. And I'll tell you, I'm going to give you some of my talking points, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of sort of Prop 8 lore, you might say, because I was an official campaign spokeswoman during the Prop 8 campaign, which I got into this whole business kind of kicking and screaming. I dragged into it, you might say. As Wendy indicated, the first 2 books that I wrote, and God willing there will be more books, but so far I can't afford to write another book because it takes so much time and it doesn't pay anything. But the first 2 books that I wrote, one was in 2001, one was in 2005, and there was not a single word in either of those books about homosexuality or the subject of so-called same-sex marriage. And I remember when I was doing publicity for those books, every once in a while somebody in the audience would say, Dr. Morse, what do you think about gay marriage? And I would say, well, you know, it's my job to straighten out the straight people, and that's a full-time job. And everyone would laugh, and we would kind of go on from there, you know. But now it's gotten to the point where it's not a laughing matter anymore. It's really quite serious, and there's really quite a bit at stake. And so we're here tonight to talk about some of the things that are at stake, and I hope that I can give you a way of thinking about it, a way of arguing for it, and some confidence in talking about the issue. Before I do that, though, I'd like to invite all of you to sign up for the Ruth Institute weekly newsletter, which is one of the main programs of the Ruth Institute, actually, is we send out an electronic newsletter every week that gives you information about every aspect of the marriage and life issues, which in my opinion are all one issue, right? The whole scope or range of things, starting with the abortion issue and the contraception issue that we're now all dealing with, and all of these issues, to me, they're all one giant issue. So if you will sign up for that and read that religiously once a week, every week when it comes out, you'll be very well informed about all of these matters. And that's electronic, so if you just want the electronic version, you could just give me your email address. But if you're interested, we also send out educational mailings through the mail as well, so if you want to give more information, that's fine. So let me start with a little Prop 8 story. Prop 8, as you may know, was the constitutional amendment in California that said that marriage is the union of one man and one woman, passed in the state of California, which, as you know, is a very liberal state. You might, I don't know if you've heard that, but that's true. It's true. Whatever you've heard about how nutty we are, it's all true. It was a constitutional amendment. We have the initiative process in California, so we, the voters, actually put it on the ballot ourselves. And the way it came about, it's kind of an interesting story how it came about. We had already a piece of legislation saying that marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and that got challenged in the courts through a case called in re marriage cases. And that was working its way through the courts, and all kinds of the cities in California were debating whether they should come in and weigh in on the subject of the court decision, whether they should file an amicus brief saying, we, the city of San Francisco, certainly endorse same-sex marriage, blah, 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 ta-da, we thump our chests and look wonderful, because there's no legal significance whatsoever. It's just all gesturing, just kind of puffing up of the self, kind of thing that they're doing. So this Don Pony show came to San Diego, and we all went down to say to the city council, we don't want this, we don't want the city council to do this. Now the whole day of hearings, very carefully scripted, every side got the same amount of time, everybody was timed perfectly, oh, it was so fair, so open, citizen democracy, and when it was all over, the city council members pulled out prepared speeches and told us that they planned to vote for the amicus brief. So we're sitting there thinking, holy mackerel, this is a done deal. They don't care what we think. They don't care what we think. We need to get this on the ballot, and we need to get it on the ballot now. And so it was a group of people in San Diego, a lot of Catholics, not exclusively Catholics, but a lot of Catholics in San Diego, got together the money to get it on the ballot in the first place. And once the Catholics of San Diego got it on the ballot, due to the help of our then auxiliary bishop Salvatore Cordileone, he and Maggie Gallagher, kind of made this all happen. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, once it got on the ballot, then there was a whole coalition that came together to promote Proposition 8 and to see the thing through. Once it was on the ballot, all of the other groups came together, all of the other religious bodies came together, the evangelicals got together and did big simulcasts and webinars and all this kind of stuff, which I'm not an evangelical, but I understand it's not easy to get evangelicals to all do the same thing at the same time. So Pastor Garlow was like, Jim Garlow, he got all of this happening and so on. The LDS Church did amazing work getting involved in this whole thing. Even Orthodox Jews were involved. And in fact, I want to tell you, this is a story I want to tell you, that one of my favorite events of Prop 8 took place in Beverly Hills at an Orthodox Jewish synagogue. And I was invited as the campaign spokesman, and there were representatives of the LDS Church and the Catholic Church and the Protestants and of course the rabbi. And I got up to give my speech and I looked out there and the place is packed with Mormons and evangelicals. You haven't lived until you've been in a synagogue packed with Mormons and evangelicals. So it was, I thought, emblematic of the great unifying force of the issue of marriage. Okay, marriage is not a wedge issue. Marriage is a unifying issue. Marriage brings people together, brings people from all religions together. It also brings people of all races together. In California, for Prop 8, I was on Spanish language radio multiple times talking about Prop 8. And I don't speak any Spanish. The guy did it bilingually, he translated everything. His listeners were very well informed already before I ever got on there about this issue. And Hispanics indeed voted in favor of traditional marriage and when the issue came up with Prop 8. Likewise, the African American community in 2008, people were very eager to go to the polls to vote for the first black president. And some of those people, well, let us say 70%, of the African American community voted yes on Prop 8, putting to bed the notion that this is just another civil rights issue, right? And that it's just a simple carry-on to Martin Luther King's dream speech. No, they don't see it that way. They certainly do not see it that way. So marriage, I want you to come away from tonight's talk with some confidence that marriage is a unifying issue, that marriage is something that brings people together, people who have been separated for a long time, and over a lot of other issues. People are now working together. I'm telling you, if you had been in San Diego in 2008, you would have felt the Spirit. You would have felt the Holy Spirit working through some of the crazy things that happened that were so unlikely, like a Pentecostal guy renting out Qualcomm Stadium the week before the election. It's a place full of Pentecostals. I don't know, do y'all have Pentecostals up here? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so, right across the street from Qualcomm Stadium is Mission San Diego, founded by Father Sarah himself in the 18th century. So the Catholics we all had a little mass over there and everything, and then we had a procession, and we processed with the bishop leading us across the street and down Highway 8 and so on, and into Qualcomm Stadium. And the Pentecostals are over there doing their thing, the whole thing, and we're kind of, Our Father, we're kind of feeling a little out of place, but who cares? Who cares, right? The people are sound on the marriage question, and they love the Lord. Who cares, And that's the way we all ended up feeling about it by the time the thing was over. So I want you to know that today, that you are on the right side of history, and that's what I want to impress upon you tonight, is that I want you to have the confidence to argue for natural marriage, and I want you to know that you are on the right side of history. I don't want you to be intimidated. Now, I've been studying this stuff for a long time, and I know a lot of stuff, okay? But the stuff is not as important, I think, as the attitude, right? I want you to have a little bit of attitude, you guys. I don't want you cowering in the corner, afraid somebody's going to call you a bigot or something, okay? We gotta get over that. I want you to have the confidence that these positions can be defended at the highest level. So even if you don't remember every single thing I say, don't worry about it. You can find it at the ruthinstitute.org website. There's a ton of stuff there, right? Don't worry if you can't remember everything I say. That's not the point. The point is it can be defended, and it can be defended by you. Okay, so I want you to feel confident about that today. So what I want to do in the main body of my talk is to talk with you about why it is that marriage really should properly be the union of one man and one woman, period, full stop. Now you will notice throughout my talk that I very much avoid using the term same-sex marriage. There's a reason for that. It's my position that there's no such thing as a same-sex marriage. And I think every time you use that term as if it was a real thing, you're basically carrying water for the other side. So I would really encourage you not to use that term, okay? You can say so-called same-sex marriage, you can say the redefinition of marriage, you can say genderless marriage, or if you want to, you can use a big old clunky long phrase that does not roll off your tongue whatsoever, but that takes you a long time to say. You can say, we're having a vote on whether to remove the gender requirement for marriage. Because that's really what we're doing, isn't it? Right? We're voting on whether there's a gender requirement for marriage. Is gender part of marriage or not? That's what we're voting on, okay? So we don't need an easy term. Let them come up with easy terms. That's their job. It's not our job to make it easier to explain their point for them, okay? So you will find that I try to avoid, I don't always succeed, but I really try to avoid using the term same-sex so-called marriage.
GrokTV.